Story 1. Detective Lucas Grant parked his car outside the crumbling facade of the old Sinclair factory. The once thriving industrial complex had long been abandoned, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Tonight, however, it had become the scene of a grisly crime. As Grant stepped into the eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of the city, he was met by Officer Kim, who was already securing the perimeter. "We've got a body inside, Detective," she said, her face pale. "It's not pretty." Grant followed Kim into the factory, where the stark beams of their flashlights cut through the darkness. In the center of the vast, empty space lay the victim, a man in his late 40s, bound and gagged, with multiple gunshot wounds to his chest. The floor around him was stained with blood, and a quick glance at the scene told Grant this was a professional hit. "Who found him?" Grant asked, crouching beside the body. "Anonymous tip," Kim replied. "Caller didn't leave a name, just said we'd find something big here." As Grant examined the body, he noticed a tattoo on the victim's wrist, a distinctive serpent coiled around a dagger. Recognizing it immediately, he muttered, "Dante Russo." Russo was a notorious mob enforcer known for his ruthless tactics. Grant had been trying to build a case against him for years, but Russo always managed to slip through the cracks. Now someone had done the job for him. The question was, who? Grant's investigation led him to the heart of the city's underworld. Russo's death had sent shockwaves through the criminal community, and rumors were swirling about a power struggle within the syndicate. Grant's informants pointed him toward Maria Velez, a rising figure in the mob who had recently clashed with Russo. Velez was known for her ambition and had the connections to order a hit of this magnitude. Grant knew he had to tread carefully. One wrong move could blow the whole case. Grant arranged a covert meeting with Velez at a secluded bar on the outskirts of town. As he walked in, he saw her sitting in a dim corner, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "Detective," she greeted him coolly, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I think you know," Grant replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "Dante Russo. You had him killed, didn't you?" Velez smirked, taking a sip of her drink. "Prove it," she said, leaning back. "Russo had plenty of enemies. Maybe one of them finally got lucky." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the entrance. Grant turned to see several men in dark suits entering the bar, their expressions grim. It was clear they were looking for someone, and that someone was Maria Velez. "Looks like your time's up, Maria," Grant said, standing up. "You should have stayed out of the spotlight." The men approached the table, guns drawn. "Maria Velez, you're coming with us," their leader said coldly. Velez's smirk faded, replaced by a look of defiance. She stood slowly, her eyes never leaving Grant's. "This isn't over, Detective," she hissed, "not by a long shot." As Velez was escorted out, Grant knew she was right. The power vacuum left by Russo's death was just beginning to show its effects. The criminal underworld was in turmoil, and there would be more bloodshed before it was over. But for now, he had a lead, and that was enough. The game was far from finished, and Grant was ready to play. Story 2. Detective Rachel Morgan stood in the cold rain, staring at the crime scene tape that cordoned off the entrance to the luxurious high-rise apartment. The upscale building was an unlikely setting for murder, but tonight it had become just that. The victim, Emily Turner, a renowned fashion designer, was found dead in her penthouse, a single bullet wound to her chest. Morgan knew this case would be anything but straightforward. Turner was a high-profile figure with plenty of friends and enemies. Inside the penthouse, Morgan took in the scene. The place was immaculate, save for the bloodstain on the pristine white carpet. Turner's body lay sprawled next to a shattered glass table, suggesting a struggle. Her assistant, Claire Reynolds, was sobbing on the couch, her mascara running down her cheeks. "I can't believe she's gone," Claire whispered between sobs. "She was like a sister to me." Morgan glanced at the broken table. "Tell me everything you know, Claire. Who would want to hurt Emily?" Claire wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Emily had been receiving threats for weeks. She didn't take them seriously, but I was scared for her. She mentioned a man named Mark Weaver. They had a nasty breakup recently. He was obsessed with her, always calling and showing up unannounced. Morgan's next stop was Weaver's apartment. Weaver was a successful businessman with a temper and a history of violence. When he opened the door, his eyes were bloodshot and he reeked of alcohol. "Detective, I had nothing to do with Emily's death," he slurred. "I loved her. Yes, we had our problems, but I would never hurt her." Morgan wasn't convinced. She searched his apartment, finding a collection of photos of Emily, many of them torn or defaced. It was clear Weaver was unstable, but without concrete evidence, her case was thin. Just as she was about to leave, her phone buzzed. Forensics had found something, a partial fingerprint on the broken glass in Turner's apartment. The fingerprint didn't belong to Weaver. Instead, it matched someone in the police database, a professional hitman named Victor Hall, known for making murders look like crimes of passion. Morgan tracked Hall down to a dingy motel on the outskirts of town. Cornered and out of options, Hall confessed. Weaver had hired him to kill Turner, jealous of her success and determined to ruin her life when she refused to take him back. With Hall's confession and evidence of Weaver's payment, Morgan arrested Weaver. As she cuffed him, Weaver's facade of remorse shattered, replaced by a sneer. "She deserved it," he spat. "She thought she was better than me." Back at the station, Morgan watched as Weaver was led to a cell. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow. Another life destroyed by obsession and violence, another family left to pick up the pieces. As she stepped into the night, the rain had stopped, but the city felt as heavy as ever. Tomorrow would bring a new case, but tonight, Morgan allowed herself a moment to reflect on the price of vengeance.